2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Welcome on, Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Scott Germain, and we're excited to be here. We're doing a live. We had a weird day game, and when I say weird, It was an 11:10 a.m. game. The game itself was weird. Scott, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into Max Muncy. We're going to get into Gavin Lux. We're going to talk the bullpen, and most importantly, we're going to talk a huge weekend series that the Dodgers have in San Francisco coming up this weekend. But let me start by, how you doing? Friday night. Big Dodgers win today. We feeling good over there?
Doing good. Thursday night.
Thursday night. Excuse me. It feels like a Friday night.
That's okay. No worries. That's a good thing, though. That's a good feeling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as we said, Dodgers win today, 11-9, and that's where we're going to kind of start our conversations today, which is the absolute wild win that the Dodgers have against the White Sox. Let me throw some just bizarre facts about today's game. 4 hours and 15 minutes for a 9-inning game. That's an 11:10 a.m. start. So it didn't feel that long maybe because it was still ending at 3 and not 11:30, thankfully. We had total 22 hits, 13 walks, 20 runs. There were 13 pitchers used. The Dodgers were down by as many as 4. They score 6 runs in the 5th, 4 runs in the 6th to take a 10-5 lead. They give 2 back in the 8th, 2 back in the 9th. The White Sox strand 2 runners in the 8th, 2 runners in the 9th. All of this, by the way, in a game in which Mookie Betts, the best player in baseball, goes 0 for 6. The Dodgers had 3 guys go 0 for in a game they scored 11 runs. I don't know how many teams could do that. Max Muncy, who we'll talk about, 2 for 5 with 5 RBIs, 2 extra base hits, also struck out 3 times. Freddie Freeman, 3 for 5. Gavin Lux, another guy we're going to talk about, 4 for 4. On the pitching side, if you want just a quick recap, Tyler Anderson only goes 3 innings, gives up 4 earned runs. Bickford wasn't great. Vesia wasn't great. Daniel Hudson was not great. Dave Roberts leaving Vesia and Hudson out there to die, basically. Only they didn't die. They sort of rebounded. So the Dodgers win. That's the important part. They take 2 out of 3 against the White Sox. Scott, you were dialed into this game. Tell me sort of big picture, what were your takeaways from this one?
It was good to see them fight. You know, it was really good to see them battle back, pick Tyler Anderson up, a guy who's been really steady all year. Just one of the best surprises. Unfortunately, his scoreless streak was broken. I think it was 28 innings.
Yeah,
so
I think
you know, it was gave up that hit to Josh Harrison. That was rough. But it was good they got a win. Broad stroke, but a couple guys really stood out. It was nice to see Freddie Freeman kind of get off the schneid a bit.
Yeah.
Right. He's been struggling as of late, and picked up Mookie at the top. That's when those 2 guys are going together, it's an incredibly tough offense to beat. But when Mookie went 0 for 6, that's and they still won a game. But Freddie came up, had 3 RBI. He just looked good. He looked really comfortable.
Yeah, Freddie Freeman is a guy, you look at the stat line, it's good. I would say even above average. Jim Bowden had him as a guy that he expects to be in the All-Star game. So it tells you he's playing well, and yet it feels somewhat disappointing. 4 home runs. I had some people criticizing me for having him second on my most trusted players right now list. They wanted Trey Turner above him. Some even wanted Gonsolin and Tyler Anderson above him. Obviously, Gonsolin yesterday maybe making a push. Tyler Anderson today maybe saying he was right where he belonged. But a lot of people in the comments, first of all, we appreciate you joining us, but just calling it an ugly win, but saying we'll take it. And I think that's right. I like what you said, Scott, just the fact that they fought back. I mean, to go down 4-0, 11 a.m., weird game, getaway day, all that sort of stuff, that feels like an easy opportunity to sort of pack it in. But to come back and get 6 and then to get 4, and just to sort of they add 1 in the 9th, which ended up being a big run. They only win by 2. They had some relievers. Vesia, again, I mean, he lets the first 4 guys reach. He battles back and gets 3 outs. Hudson lets 4 of the first 5 guys reach. He battles back and gets out of that inning. And so it's just, these are the types of wins. When we think about the Dodgers, let me put it this way. When we think about the Dodgers, we expect them to just blow everybody out. Like, we expect it to be pretty all of the time. But these are the wins that I think add up as the season goes along. Because not every game are you going to have everything clicking. Mookie goes 0 for 6. Your starting pitcher lets you down. They still score 11 runs. They still win on the road on a getaway day. That to me tells me a lot of the mentality and just kind of where this team is at.
Yeah, I think the thing that the big roadblock today was Tyler Anderson having that really long first inning.
Yeah.
That offset everything because he's been really consistent going deep into games. Deep, his last, I think, let me look. He's at last five games, 7 innings, 8 innings, 6 innings, 6 innings. And today he has that really long first inning and he gets taken out after 3 and they picked him up. He got out of that first inning, without any damage done, which is really, really a testament to who he is. And the zone today, he wasn't getting that inside. So he had to really, push towards the outer half. And wasn't getting those calls, just like they, otherwise last night we're getting everything on that outer half. But where do we go? The bullpen, the bullpen has been a little stressed. They've been okay.
Yeah.
But I think they're just being pressed a little bit with some of the absences and Craig Kimbrell not being there. Well, you can touch on that. Craig Kimbrell not being there just came at a really unfortunate time.
Yeah, absolutely. One other note on Anderson, because I agree with you. He kind of has a rough start to the first inning, has a quick second inning, comes back out to the third. That weird Josh Harrison triple where the ball, hits off the net, which in Chicago is in play, and then rolls across the top of the wall over Mookie Betts' head, and all of a sudden it's a triple. He gets a ground out. I mean, you could very easily have been a double and then ground out, and you're out of the inning, and it's still 0-0 at that point. But again, if those are pressure pitches, so you've got now pressure pitches in the first, pressure pitches in the third, he comes back out for the fourth, walk, single, ground rule, double, walk, and then he's done. So I think you make a great point that first inning, he didn't give up any runs, but it kind of ended up costing him. And to your point, then all of a sudden you're into this bullpen that has been taxed. Yes, you had an off day on Monday, but with no Kimbrel, as you said, some guys in there, Almonte had pitched multiple days in a row. You've got guys like Ferguson that maybe you're not quite ready to start trusting consistently in back-to-back games, that type of a thing. And so it sort of adds up. I think the Dodgers ended up using 7 pitchers in that one. So speaking of the bullpen real quick, and then we'll get to Muncy and then we'll get to Lux. Alex Vesia, an interesting name. He was a guy when I did my list of people I trust, I had him like 17th, I think. And as I was doing that with Matt, I was like, I think I'd move Vesia up. Well, today he says maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I should leave him down. Here are his numbers. His last 5 1/3 innings pitched. So that's 16 outs. The last 16 outs he has gotten, he has allowed 13 base runners. That's 9 hits and 4 walks and 5 earned runs. So he's got an ERA just under 9 and a whip of, what's that? Two and change, 2.6 or something like that is his whip in his last 5 1/3. Does have 10 strikeouts. So basically everybody that gets out is via the strikeout. What are you seeing from Vesia? I mean, people in the chat are commenting 8 straight balls to start the outing. As I said, first 4 guys all reach against him. But then he gets 3 straight guys with runners at second and third to sort of close that one out. And so kind of a weird outing from Vesia. But where are you at with him?
Yeah, I've got a couple of notes on the bullpen I want to touch on, but Vesia, he's a really interesting starting point. His stuff is so good. They say 8 straight balls to start out, but which is odd. That's who he was when he came with the Dodgers, but his stuff is so good as he's got such a high spin rate on his fastball. He can just let it play in the zone. So for him not to really just pound it and, say, come hit it, that kind of needs to be his approach.
Yeah.
Maybe he just didn't have it today. Like Anderson, he just wasn't pounding the zone, wasn't getting the whiffs, but Vesia got the whiffs when he came in the zone. So, I still trust Vesia. He came out, just had a little hiccup. I wouldn't put too much into it other than that, he's kind of been like that all year. A couple guys have been like that all year, like Bickford, same type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and Daniel Hudson, the other guy who struggled today. Look, my belief in Daniel Hudson did not change at all. This is a guy who had to pitch yesterday as well. Then he comes back tonight, sort of put in a tough situation. Ends up, as I said, four of the first 5 guys he faces end up reaching against him. But again, is able to dig deep, kind of get out of that inning. I'm guessing we're on the same page there, but no concerns, I'm imagining, about Daniel Hudson for you?
No, Daniel Hudson's a dog. He's really come out. It's his second save in 24 hours, pretty much. Second time closing out a game in 24 hours through 35 pitches today. It kind of felt that it was his game. Same thing with the Pirates game. They just, it's his game. It's his thing. Just let him go out there, finish it out. And he's just had some bad luck base hits, some ground balls through the right side of the infield, just unfortunate stuff. And you can't, you're making your pitches. They're just tapping it out there. He, wasn't getting hit hard. But he's been one of their best relievers, and he's just been solid. And I'm a Daniel Hudson guy. We love Huddy.
Yeah, and let me ask you one last question on the bullpen. What did you think of the way Roberts handled Vesia and Hudson? So Vesia allows the first 4 guys to reach. I believe at that point it was a 3-run game with runners at second and third.
Mm-hmm.
And might have been a 2-run game, actually, with runners in second and third, because I think the Dodgers added there. And he just leaves Vesia in the game. Like, as far as I could tell, there's nobody warming up in the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
And they leaves him in the game. You come to the 9th inning, Hudson allows 4 of the first 5 guys to reach. All of a sudden, the tying run is on base. And that in the 9th inning as well, he's standing at first base, and he leaves him in the game. David Price does start to warm. He was pretty much the only guy left, maybe Justin Brule. But what did you – I mean, like, he was vindicated because both guys end up, rebounding from that difficult start. But I think this is a pet peeve of mine with Dave Roberts. It feels like a trend, and I can't figure out in this case whether it was a mistake or whether that was just the hand he was dealt with where the bullpen is at.
Yeah, I tend to give Dave Roberts maybe too much of a pass. But his
you would be alone on this show, I think, Scott, and that we need more of you on that show, because Daniel and I think are the opposite.
Yeah, no, where I'm really critical of him is bullpen management. I like every Dodger fan, I believe, and they have a right. But this time it felt like, Vesia, just like Daniel Hudson, he had to be out there. I don't want David Price coming in with runners on base. I just don't. After the last outing he had, it felt like he was either auditioning for his spot actually on the team or for other teams, because it's just Vesia he's an angry guy. He's an angry pitcher. When he gets that mode, just like he said, let his stuff play, and that's all he really needs to do. But it just felt like Dave said, we just can't go to anybody else, because if this game it gets extended, shrug your shoulders. What are you going to do? It's a numbers game out there.
Yes, I retweeted somebody, I forget who, but it was like, look, if Hudson blows a 4-run lead, there's nothing you can do. And you could tell that was Robert's mentality. Look, we have Vesia and we have Hudson for the 8th and the 9th, and that's just what we're doing. As I said, Yency Almonte was not available tonight. You had Price and Brule, the only other guys. They had used everybody else. Ferguson, Bickford, Gratterall Phillips had already come into the game. And so he basically said, I'm going to need 9 outs from Phillips, Vesia, and Hudson. And Phillips did his job perfectly. Vesia struggled. Hudson struggled. But at the end of the day, they get their job done. Let's do this. Let's shift gears to talk about 2 other guys offensively today that I think are sort of big storylines. And the first one, I think, is a guy who maybe is the most interesting, which is Max Muncy, recalled from the injured list today, from his rehab assignment today. I tweeted before the game. I said Max Muncy is about to rake. Just had a good feeling. I think, you go down to AAA, you find the love of the game. He had a walk-off hit, the whole deal. And so that said, he was 2 for 14 at AAA with 6 strikeouts. So you look at the walk-off and you say, oh, man, Muncy's back. He wasn't great at AAA. He comes in today, strikeout, 9-pitch at bat. We all start talking about at-bat quality, which I laugh at because I'm just like, look, if he strikes out, I don't care how many pitches it was, it's still a strikeout. But 9 pitches, strikeout, second at bat, strikeout. My brother is about to text me, decides not to. He thinks he's grateful for that because then he goes double and home run in his next 2 at-bats, both 100-mile-an-hour lasers off the bat. We'll get to the intentional walk to get to Muncy here in just a second because that's a story in itself. But I don't want to bury the lead. You watched this game. You were dialed in. What did you make of Muncy? 9-pitch at bat and the strikeout. Like, did that have you feeling good? Were you more encouraged by the 9 pitches or more discouraged by the strikeout? Because he did finish with 3 strikeouts today.
What's really hilarious about Max Muncy is he is who he is. Ever since he's had this turnaround, he's been an incredibly patient hitter, one of the best in the league. Sometimes a little bit too patient, but he did the same thing in AAA. He had, I believe, through his first 4 at bats or 6 at bats, he saw upper 20s pitches, like 29, 30 pitches. So he those first 2 at bats, really was a little bit more of the same. But just like he said, he really wanted to take that IL stint as a mental break and a physical break to let his elbow inflammation kind of calm down. That was a huge thing. And if anybody can imagine that, that's his front arm, that's his top hand, or sorry, his bottom hand. That's a big deal. So. In that 5th inning, he took a 97-mile-an-hour outer half fastball from Dylan Cease, and he's disgusting. And put that to left center.
He doesn't know where it's going all the time, but Cease is disgusting. When it is in the strike zone, it's nasty. Yeah.
So what was good to see is that he was ahead in the count, and he didn't allow Dylan Cease to put himself in a spot where he could have like to even the count or even have an upper hand on the count and put him in a you have to swing if it's close situation. He got a fastball in the zone and took it, and that was a huge thing. That was big. That was show because he's been bad against the fastball this year. I think like batting under 100 against four seams. And it was really encouraging to see him go the other way and not try to pull it.
Love it. I love it. And again, 100 miles an hour off the bat twice. I mean, look, 2 for 5. You could say 3 strikeouts and 2 extra base hits. THB in the comments says, look, I don't care about anybody striking out against the White Sox. They strike everybody out. That's one perspective there. But I mean, Cease, like I said, he's nasty. He like leads the league in walks, but you watch him and he has no idea where his fastball or his breaking ball is going. But it's also disgusting. Like the curveball is just dropping off the face of the earth, and the fastball is 97, 98, and looks like it's moving up vertically. So credit to that, and we'll see. I mean, like, let me ask you this before we move on. What's your confidence level with Muncy right now?
We'll see. That it's super encouraging. It's good not to see him revert to his old ways. And just look for walks. Or just like I said, he would get into counts and force a pitcher to make a pitch or get into a spot where he has to swing, and then he would, he wouldn't capitalize. I think a lot of the Dodgers, this is a topic we could have like about the whole lineup, and they put themselves in position to have an upper hand, and they end up taking a pitch they could slug because they want to, go deeper into a count. Yeah. And it was just good to see Max like be aggressive today, just like when he had the homer that was on a slider, an outer half slider on lefty. And he's been bad versus sliders, and he took it the other way. And that was after the intentional walk.
Yeah, no, I like what you said about being able to get ahead in the count and that kind of thing, because I think that speaks volumes to, him and maybe where he's at. Because, part of it is, like, the health thing is what it is. I think he said, look, I'm not going to be 100% this year. It takes time for that injury to heal. But I do think there's a mentality piece that could potentially sort of be the key that gets unlocked. Let's talk about the intentional walk. If you missed the game, this was the moment that Twitter is talking about the most. It's absolutely amazing. It's Tony La Russa at his finest. The best part to me is that he then doubled down. I mean, the whole thing is amazing, but he doubles down on it. So if you're unfamiliar, Dodgers have a runner on base. Trey Turner is up. They pitch to Trey Turner. He gets into a 1-2 count. In a 1-2 count, Tony La Russa decides to intentionally walk Trey Turner to get to Max Muncy. Now, if you're going to tell me we're going to intentionally walk Trey Turner to get to Max Muncy, just in general, I believe the runner was on second base. Is that right, Scott? When Trey Turner was up?
Yeah,
so it's not like there's a guy on first. He decides to walk Trey Turner. On the surface, generally, all right, fine. I get it. Max Muncy's been really bad. Trey Turner's been really good. Yes, Muncy, keep in mind, has already doubled in this game. So it's not like he's 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. He's 1 for 3 with a double in his last at bat. They decide to walk Trey Turner, again, in a 1-2 count. So the first thing that I love about this is the announcers. Jason Benetti, who's a great announcer, he's calling the game. And, like, there's a clip. Jeff Passan tweeted it. You got to find it. I mean, Benetti is speechless. He's like, what do we do? What happened? What are we doing? So they walk him. Max Muncy ends up hitting the home run, of course. The other moment in that Passan video that is great, which Passan pointed out, is, like, the last, 10 seconds of the 30-second clip. You can hear a fan audibly screaming on the broadcast saying, 2 strikes, 2 strikes, 2 strikes. So then La Russa is asked about this after the game, and he says, not a tough decision.
Yeah.
Not a tough decision. No. Was it a tough decision at 0-0? Was it a tough decision at, 1-1, 1-2? At what point did it become an easy decision? It's amazing. It's Tony La Russa. The guy's a joke. I'm so glad he's not our manager. If you ever want to complain about Dave Roberts, be thankful you don't have Tony La Russa. Just an amazing moment of baseball in my estimation, Scott.
Yeah, he was TLR. He was incredibly surprised that reporters were asking him about the decision, and that blows me away. Yeah. If Dave Roberts does that, when do we riot? When do we go crazy? How fast are we banging the table? That would be that for me was almost as wild as Joe Madden's bases loaded walk.
Yeah.
So, the moment before something terrible happens, it's just hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Trust me, if Dave Roberts did something like that, if he intentionally walks a guy on 1-2, I think somebody from research said they have statistics based on in counts. And I believe he's the only player in the system, which date back to 1988, I believe. He's the only player in the system to be walked intentionally walked with 2 strikes in the count, I believe. It might be 1 and 2, but I think it was with 2 strikes. And so, as THP says there, absolutely hilarious. All right, one other guy that I want to talk about because I think it warrants it, Gavin Lux. 4 for 4 today. In the month of June, he is now hitting 440 with an OPS over 1,000, 517 on base, 520 slugging percentage, 11 for 25 with 2 doubles, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. It's the pros and the cons with Gavin Lux. The pros are he's hitting 290. He's got a solid on-base percentage, 373 on-base percentage. The cons are absolutely no power. He's got a slugging percentage lower than his on-base percentage, 363. Still a 737 OPS, which, by the way, is like perfectly fine. Again, he's hitting 290, but he hasn't hit a home run since April 13th. And yet, I looked it up. Amongst Major League second basemen in wins above replacement after today, he's 9th. 9th in all of baseball among second basemen in wins above replacement. So where are you at on Gavin Lux? I don't want to overreact to a 4-hit game, but the guy's hitting 290. Like, we can talk about the slugging percentage and the on-base percentage. He's hitting 290.
Yeah. Dave Roberts said he sees him as a guy to hit 300 or above. And his hint, if you look at Gavin Lux in the month of June, his on-base percentage is 517.
Yeah.
And when he hits in bunches. He gets base hits in bunches, and that's fine. If the rest of the Dodgers lineup is going to slug, it's totally fine for a guy with his speed to just get on base.
Yeah.
And I love it. And he's made me a believer. And I'm on the record as being very pessimistic about Gavin Lux for a lot of reasons. But he's a confidence guy. He seems like when he's playing well, mechanics are working. The kid is special. So.
Yeah. And I mean, look, like, was he a top 5 prospect? Yes. Like, if you have a top 5 prospect, are you aspiring to a guy who's got a 737 OPS, no matter how you get to 737? No, absolutely not. And yet, he's like an above average Major League Baseball player. He offers you defensive versatility. Like, he's going to be, I believe, like, he can play a competent second base today. I think he's going to be a competent left fielder at some point, and a guy who could probably even play a tiny bit of center field in a pinch if you needed him.
Yep.
I think he's going to develop to be a Chris Taylor defensive type, I guess is what I'm getting at. And if you can get that with a guy who hits 290, 300, which I think is reasonable. Like, I don't think that's unreasonable to expect with what we've seen. And by the way, as somebody points in here, like, Lux at the minor league level was a doubles guy with a little bit of power. Like, it's a dead baseball. I think the doubles are going to come. Like, if you look at the on-base percentage today, as I said, 373. That's a very good on-base percentage. The slugging percentage is 364. I mean, could that number get up to 420, 450? Because then all of a sudden, if you're at the 420 mark, you're talking about a guy with an 800 OPS playing second base and hitting 290. Like, that's a borderline all-star. And so
give me that.
I just think, like, we, on one hand, we need to temper expectations and say this isn't a guy who's going to be like a top 5 prospect in the form of like competing for MVPs or something like that. But the version of Gavin Lux we see right now could make a couple all-star teams. And for a guy that, is going to be on a rookie contract for the next 5 years, like, we should all be thrilled with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're talking about a guy who's going to hit, 7th, 8th, or 9th.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it shouldn't be that much of a topic, but with the DH now, that turns the lineup over.
Yeah.
And he gets on base, can steal a bag, and he's done it. He's a confidence guy, right? And that's just what I see out of him. When he's completely feeling good, he can do a lot of things, make a lot of disruption on the bases. He can do a lot of things really well. I'm not willing to say like he's a world beater, but he's a really solid baseball player. He's developing into what I think a lot of what Dodger fans should expect from him, and he needs to believe in himself a lot.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Some people in the chat, Gary says, sell and Lux while the stock is high. They need an arm more than a bat. Okay, let's put away they need an arm more than a bat, because that's a whole other conversation. We'll get to some mailbag questions towards the end of the show. Look, the Dodgers are like a week away from having 6 starting pitchers, okay? So I don't know if they need an arm more than a bat. But Lux, if you said you've been pessimistic historically, he's hitting 290 right now. 370 on base. He's under team control. The stock is definitely trending in the right direction. Do you think this is like a sell high on Gavin Lux moment for the Dodgers? Or do you think that what he's doing is sustainable? Because if you think this is sustainable, like if you think that Gavin Lux can give you a 290 batting average and a 370 on base percentage for the next 5 years while playing a competent second base and a little bit of outfield, You don't trade away that as an asset for the team like the Dodgers that needs to be able to, pay 3 or 4 guys $40 million and everybody else on rookie contracts. But if you think he's more likely to be a 260 average, 340 on base percentage guy with no power, and the OPS is hovering around 650, 680, then I think you would want to sell high. So where are you at on Lux, and as far as would he be a guy that you would be looking to move while the stock is high? Or are you seeing things that you're like, I actually think there's some sustainable things here, and I'm buying and holding moving forward?
So for now, I'm holding. I'm with his contract and that team control. He's not going anywhere. He's shown improvement, which is all you ask out of a top prospect, right?
Yeah.
So with the uncertainty with Trey Turner coming back, and with the ability that I won't get into Trey Turner leaving because I don't want to be in that reality just yet. But if that is the case, you can put Taylor at short, and then that still gives the ability to, have Gavin Lux play in the infield, spell Taylor in left when he's playing short. They're grooming him for that versatility role, which Dave Roberts loves, Andrew Friedman loves, and just makes everyone's life easier, allows you to, mix and match. It's just, they're not going to trade Lux unless it's for someone that's worth trading for. Yeah. And that's just a lot of team control for arguably an everyday big leaguer. That's big. Those guys don't get traded very often. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, so before today's game, he was a 1.1 wins above replacement player. That's in 50 games. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy that, at what, is a 3-win player. He's 24 and a half years old and is not a free agent until 2027. And we're talking about trading. And again, I think a key point here, and we're going to move on to the Giants in just a second, a key point to remember is the Dodgers roster building strategy. It's become very clear. The Dodgers roster building strategy is go and sign a bunch, whatever number that is. Is it 3? Is it 5? Absolute max type players. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Trevor Bauer, Max Scherzer, etc. 3 to 5 of those guys, and then surround them with guys on cheap contracts. Surround them with Walker Buehler and Julio Urias and Tony Gonsolin, who are all on, rookie contracts still. Surround them with Gavin Lux. Those types of players, Edwin Rios, the Dodgers need those guys in order for this to be sustainable. And so you can't trade away a competent major league player who is not a free agent until 2027, who is not even arbitration eligible until 2024, unless it is an absolute needle mover. And as I would say the Dodgers don't need a starter right now, because who are you taking out of the starting rotation? It's not Buehler, it's not Urias, it's not Kershaw, and it's definitely not Gonsolin or Anderson. And oh, by the way, Andrew Heaney, who might have been the best of the whole bunch before he went down, is due back in the next week or two. And
he's been great. He's been great. He's dominating down there.
Totally. So you're not gonna bump 1, let alone 2 of those guys out of the rotation, even if it's to go get a Frankie Montas or a Luis Castillo. Like the added value there, and we're not even gonna mention the fact that the Dodgers aren't exactly deep on the offensive side of things with Pilar out and Rios out, that kind of a thing. So to me, I understand why people are talking about trading Lux. I think it ultimately comes down to, are you a believer or are you not a believer? I'm a believer in Lux. What does that mean? I think he's make a couple All-Stars in your career, be a 2.5 to 3 win player. And if you get that on a rookie deal for 5 years, then you take it, you run with it, you don't even think twice about it. So especially with, by the way, last thing, the Dodgers farm system is loaded with arms. There aren't exactly a ton. There are some position players at the top, but there aren't guys that are like banging it down the door. There's someone in the chat mentioning Michael Busch. Go look at his numbers at AAA. They haven't been good. Miguel Vargas is probably the closest, maybe a little bit ahead, but he doesn't play the same position as Gavin Lux. Andy Pages is a couple years away. Diego Cartaya is a couple years away. So they don't exactly have sort of offensive guys that are busting down the door in the same way they've got Pepio and Grove and Miller and Knack, and you just go down the list on pitching. So, all right, let's talk San Francisco Giants. A preview of a big series here, and I'll throw some numbers at you just as kind of a general sense. Dodgers currently 2 games up in the division over the Padres, 6.5 games up on the Giants, who are in 3rd place. Some statistics for you. The Giants are 3rd in the league in runs scored. The Dodgers are 2nd. The Giants are 6th in the league in on-base percentage. The Dodgers are 2nd. The Giants are 11th in the league in home runs. The Dodgers are 10th. So they're better in every offensive category. On the pitching side, the Giants are 19th in starters ERA. The Dodgers are 1st. The Giants are 25th in bullpen ERA. The Dodgers are 9th. They are better in every hitting category. They are better in every pitching category. Good news for the Dodgers. The Giants' two best pitchers, Logan Webb and Alex Cobb, both not pitching in this. I shouldn't say best. Carlos Rodon belongs in that conversation. Logan Webb, they miss him. He was supposed to pitch on Friday. Instead, he ends up pitching today because Cobb goes on the injured list. So you don't see either of those guys this weekend. Before we get into individual matchups, this is not the Giants team of last year, Scott. It is the sense I get when I look at some of the numbers and that kind of a thing. How are you feeling? I mean, I was skeptical of the Giants' success all of last year. I said all offseason and into this year, I was way more scared of the Padres. I was still not believing the voodoo magic of Farhan Zaidi. That seems to be playing out a little. I mean, the Giants are still very good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, 6.5 games back of the Dodgers doesn't make you bad. It makes you a good team who's 6.5 games back of the best or the second best team in the National League. So before we get into the individual matchups, Giants big picture, what are your sort of observations, takeaways about them?
It's like you said, they're not the same team. They're just the Dodgers have shown that they're the cream of the crop in the NL West. The Giants have shown kind of who they are right now. They're the worst defensive team in baseball. And that's not a winning formula for a team that doesn't have superstars. You have to do all the little things right. You have to have really good back end pitching, and their bullpen is not good.
Yeah.
It's at home. A couple of things really stood out to me. At home, they're allowing the second highest opposing batting average.
Jeez.
Their pitching is bottom 10 in both WOBA, slugging percentage, and they have a team ERA, I think, around like 4.5.
Yeah.
So they're just not the same team, and their offense just isn't very good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk matchup by matchup. Then we'll end the show with some mailbag questions if folks have it. Friday night, everybody's favorite Dodger pitcher, Walker Buehler, takes the mound. Jacob Junis takes the mound for the Giants. Junis, 2.5 ERA on the season, .93 WHIP. So he's actually been good. It's the same guy who spent the last 5 years with the Kansas City Royals and had the last 3 years had an ERA over 5.2. So another sort of a Tyler Anderson type going on up in San Francisco. We're going to get to another guy, that just sort of the numbers are there. They are what they are. .93 WHIP, the pretty decent sample size. So he's been good. Of course, the other side, Walker Buehler, a guy that you and I have talked at length about in other videos. But what do you like about the matchup for the Dodgers on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk all day about Walker Buehler. I think that's the only thing I really am looking forward to seeing, aside from just how Muncy responds and just how get Mookie going again. They need to the Dodgers need to capitalize on that bad defense from the Giants and that huge outfield. They need to make them work. They need to put the ball in the alleys, take those extra bags. But with Buehler, it's just every start feels like he's searching for something and trying to tinker, and his spin rates are all out of whack. And he's looking to find a process that works with his mechanics and is a repeatable process. And that has been a really tough thing for him. And it's kind of been painful to watch, knowing who he is and how much of a competitor he is. So that's kind of where I am on Friday's game. I really hope that, the pitching staff and Buehler have a good plan coming in, because the Giants, even though they're not the same team, they'll make him work. They still will punish you if you make mistakes, because that devil magic is still there. They still find ways to win.
Yeah, without going too deep into it, there was an article posted by Baseball Prospectus today, and just in the sort of the screen grab that they posted on Twitter, there's a huge drop-off in spin rate on Buehler's fastball, totaling over 300 RPMs of raw spin lost from the beginning of the year to the end, which anecdotally is around the mark of how much raw spin you'd expect a pitcher to lose if they swore off the sticky stuff. I'm not particularly invested in speculating whether that's the case, but the facts are that Buehler had elite spin on his fastball. MLB started policing foreign substance use more intentionally, and then he became more ordinary by spin rate. Now that Buehler's had a more vulnerable fastball for about a year, it's probably worth considering what it might mean for him to never get his old fastball back. That's not good. That's not what you want to read for a guy, because, again, no, I'm not here to point fingers. I'm with the author that says, is it coincidence? It could be, but I know what I'm seeing with his fastball. It hasn't been great, and as he points out, the timing of it is not encouraging for the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's the same kind of with a lot of the, power fastball guys around the league. They've had a pretty significant drop-off, and they've had to kind of reinvent themselves. Garrett Cole, Walker Buehler, Bauer was not good after the sticky ban. So as hard as it is to admit that, he needs to find a way and figure out how to operate possibly without it, because he's still, he can still get it done. It's just a matter of how he does it. And that's out of my pay grade.
Yeah. I mean, and look, all of that said, this is a guy who finished top three in the Cy Young voting last year. And so the ban came
deep into the year too. Like it wasn't,
so the ban came a third of the way into the season. So he pitched most of the year without it. He got better as the season went on. So I'm not saying that like he's doomed as a pitcher for the rest of his life. I do think there's concern about the fastball and what's long-term there. Yeah. Saturday, where things start to get interesting. Originally, Julio Urias was the scheduled starter for this. The Dodgers have not officially announced anything, but the reports are today that Clayton Kershaw, expected to make his return from the injured list this weekend, might actually pitch on Saturday. Julio might get bumped back until Sunday. Again, none of that is official. That's just speculation, but I think Dave Roberts has kind of hinted at that. The Giants throwing a bullpen game for that one. Kershaw, first start back from the injured list, makes one start in Rancho. It goes well. He says, I'm ready. Threw a bullpen, I believe, with the major league team. What are the things that you're looking for from Kershaw returning to the big league club?
Same thing as Max Muncy. I just want to see him go out there and feel good after it. Just like Kershaw said after his rehab outing in Rancho, tossed 59 pitches, and after a few days said he felt good. That's as much as I want to hear from Clayton Kershaw, considering how well he pitched right away. Like 4-0, 1.8 ERA, 32 Ks over 5 starts. I just want to see just the process. Yeah. That's it. Results come, they come. It's the same thing as Max. These guys have done it for so long, and Kershaw, with how tricky he is, and with that injury, that's an odd injury, and that's something they'll keep an eye on. But I just want to see the process, and if he goes out there and shoves, then that's an added plus.
Yeah, it's interesting because one thing to note is that obviously they use 7 pitchers today. They only get 3 innings out of the starter. They have to travel across the country to San Francisco tomorrow night. We've got Walker Buehler on Friday, a guy who's been struggling. That I'd imagine we might see 5 or 6 innings of Walker Buehler, like literally no matter what those 5 or 6 innings look like. That might be hey, if it's one of those nights for Walker Buehler, then you're just going to kind of have to wear this one because they're going to need some rest for the bullpen, especially if you've got Kershaw, who realistically, I mean, can you expect more than 4 innings from Clayton Kershaw, do you think, on Saturday?
Robert said, he's expected to go 5. Okay. So, if you're expecting him to go 5 and he's feeling good, I don't know how much they'll push him. But if he's expected to go 5 and they're in a position to win, he might, be through 59 pitches. I don't know what his ceiling is right now, but if he's feeling good, he gives you a solid 5. I'm happy with that. But just like you said, you need to have enough bullpen to get through that. Same thing with Julio. We don't know how that goes. He's a slippery slope too.
Yeah, let's talk about Julio. Julio versus Carlos Rodon on Sunday. Rodon, if you remember the last time the Dodgers played the Giants in early May, we previewed that one, and it was like Rodon was the best pitcher in baseball, basically, at the time. He has cooled off. He has an ERA of 6 over his last 30 days. That's 5 starts. Did pitch well against the Dodgers, though. 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 3 hits back on May 3rd. On the other side, Julio, a guy that I have defended and said, hey, I think he's actually been better than people are giving him credit for, that kind of a thing. Talk to me about Julio versus Carlos Rodon on Sunday.
So Rodon is, falling back to earth, huge strikeout guy, max effort. And that's who he's been. He started off hot, and I think it was the Dodgers were the first team to really tag him. So that was, they'll have a little bit of a familiarity there. They'll be in San Fran, so ball definitely doesn't fly as much there. So I think they'll have to make him work, and I think they will, considering their patience at the plate. So you could see definitely a bullpen, not a bullpen game, but definitely a bullpen heavy game if they decide that they, will work counts against Rodon and limit strikeouts, with quick counts. But Julio, you might be higher on him than I, but what I do like from Julio is that he has competed when his fastball is not there. His fastball command hasn't been there, and he's really taken over with his secondary stuff, and he's got it done. 2.78 ERA on the season. What's really weird is that he's limiting hard hit percentage, but he is in the bottom 30 percentile in barrels.
Yeah.
So, that's big. His like FIP is 4.62.
Yeah.
So
I've had quite a few people quote that to me on Twitter.
yeah, so it just in his ERA and that just don't make sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's succeeding when he doesn't have it, and
Yeah.
that is big. And I'm not saying, oh, you go out there and you look like you're trying hard, and that's all it takes. Results matter. But the last time it's not like I haven't seen much of a different guy. Like he's developed over like through the season so far. But the last time he faced the Giants in early May, he went six shutout.
Yeah.
His strikeouts haven't been there, but he's just limited contact that did damage.
Yeah.
So it's been good. It's been good.
Yeah, and these are numbers I've thrown out before. You kind of reference them. I mean, 94th percentile in hard hit percentage, 86th percentile in exit velocity allowed. Obviously, both very good. 60th percentile or higher in expected ERA, expected batting average, and walk rate. So that's just above average. I'm not saying that's amazing Cy Young quality type stuff, but above average. The three numbers that are concerning, the strikeout rate, the whiff rate, and the barrel rate, all in the bottom 40% of baseball. The strikeout per nine is way down. Fastball velocity has been down. Vertical movement on his fastball has been good. And yet, you look at the results, he's made 11 starts, 7 of the 11, 1 run or fewer allowed. One outing where he allowed 2 runs, 1 he allowed 3 runs, 1 he allowed 4 runs, and 1 he allowed 5 runs. So he's got 9 of 11 under 3 runs this year. You can't complain about that. I mean, I know the results are. Like with Buehler, when those, if we want to talk about a strikeout rate that is bad and a whiff rate that is bad and a barrel rate that is bad, and he's getting shelled, then let's talk about it. But I think you look at some of it, and it's like the exit velocity and the hard hit tell me it's not a total fluke that he's limiting hard contact. He attacks the strike zone. He has multiple pitches between the fastball and his curveball that he's throwing for strikes right now. And so even if the velocity is not perfect, it's not missing bats, it's still inducing weak contact. And there are guys that have proven they can do this. And so I'll clarify one more time my stance on Julio Urias. I'm not saying this is peak Julio. I'm just saying it's not Walker Buehler level struggles. That's the key for me to differentiate between those two. I think Julio, you could say, is 85% of where he was last year. I think Buehler is like 40%.
Man, yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at. That gap between, there's a difference between being 85% of yourself and saying you're struggling. Sure, that's true. But if you want to compare him to a guy who's like a mess and nobody trusts right now, and we've got Dodger fans saying Walker Buehler, who finished in the top 3, and saying, hey, can we get a phantom IL stint? Maybe let this guy clear his mind for a couple weeks. I think that tells you kind of the difference between the two, and that's all I'm trying to say. So that's it. That's the 3 games we got against the Giants. I would say the Dodgers, in the Buehler-Junis game, as silly as it sounds, maybe you don't feel like you have a pitching advantage in that one, especially coming off of a game in which 7 bullpen guys get used and you got to cross-country travel. Maybe you don't feel like you have a pitching advantage in that one. Junis, for whatever it's worth, has been good this year. Kershaw versus the bullpen, you feel great about that one. And Julio versus Rodon, I would say, is kind of a push. So, both teams have one game that maybe 2 pushes and an advantage for the Dodgers in the middle. And on top of that, again, Dodgers offense, number 2 in runs, number 2 in on-base percentage. The Giants 3rd and 6th in both of those categories. So before we get to questions, if you want to start throwing some mailbag question type stuff at us, we'll get to those off of Twitter here in just a moment. But Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot here. 3 games against the Giants in San Francisco. 2 out of 3 sweep. 1 out of 3 Dodgers get swept. Where are you at?
I'll say 2 out of 3, but
it's a safe pick. It's a safe pick.
After going, after being like, after losing some close games lately, I'd love a sweep. That would be great, considering they've held San Fran to 2 runs in 2 games so far. I'd love a sweep. I'm not going to say I expect that. Yeah. But where they are at, I kind of like that. But I'll accept 2 out of 3. I usually am not like that. I'm usually like, if you're in a position to sweep and it looks like you should, the better team should win. I'd be okay with 2 out of 3, but I want to sweep.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this way. Would you be more surprised if the Dodgers go 1-2 or if the Dodgers sweep the Giants? Like if you had to go 1 game up or 1 game down from what you suggested.
I'd be more surprised if they lose 2 of 3. I'd be more surprised with that.
Okay. I was actually going to guess. I mean, I just look at the matchups, and it's on the road. San Francisco coming off of a weird road trip, the bullpen state, et cetera, et cetera. I almost would lean towards the Dodgers win 1 out of 3 in this one. I don't like where Buehler's at. on that Friday game. And again, I think they might make him wear that. They might say, we need 5 innings. And, if that's 4 earned, 6 earned, 8 earned, we need you to get 5 because we can't destroy our bullpen. I think Mitch White is probably going to be a bulk guy at some point in this series. And they could even call somebody up like a Pepio or a Grove. I guess not Pepio because he pitches tonight. But I wouldn't be surprised if they get some new arms in there is what I'm saying. But I feel good about 2 out of 3, but 1 out of 3 would be a very close second. I'm 60-40 on those 2 numbers. I'll put it that way.
So, I think the biggest plus that the Dodgers have going for them is they'll have 2 lefties starting, which means it's most likely Jock won't be able to take over the game, and that's what should strike fear into everyone, right?
It's a great point. So, all right, well, let's get to some questions. If you've got some questions you want to ask, throw them in the chat. As you can see, we've got a new setup here where we can throw those right on the screen. Scott and I will do our best on the fly to answer those questions. While you're doing that, let me plug a couple things here real quick. If you're watching us on YouTube, as I see most of you are, please make sure you are subscribed. Ring the notification bell. If you're on Twitter, please go ahead, retweet the stream that we're currently doing. That would be a huge help to us. If you're on Facebook, again, whatever you got to do on those type of sites. And also Dodger Blue 1958 on Instagram. And lastly, DodgerHeads. This is going to be going up as a podcast. So if you are listening to this after the fact, please like the page, follow the show, rate and review. Those are a huge help to us. Scott is one of our staff writers, so give him a follow on social media at Scott Germain. I'm at Jeff Spiegel on Twitter as well. Let's get to some questions here. I see Dave is asking about would I trade Mitch White. I'll throw this one up there. Mitch White does not have any trade value is the problem. I'm sure there's a team out there like Mitch White's. Let me put it this way. Mitch White's not getting you much. He's getting you a lottery ticket that if you want to clear a 40-man roster spot at some point, I think is the type of value that you're getting for Mitch White. So I just don't see the Dodgers at any point getting enough for him in the middle of the season. Maybe at the end of the season, they need to open up some 40-man roster spots. I could definitely see that. But yeah, I don't see Mitch White going anywhere. You agree with that one, Scott?
Yeah, I agree with that. Not up to par of what Dodger fans expect out of literally every single player on their team, which is perfection. Mitch White serves a purpose, and that's to eat innings. Every team needs those guys. You have to have someone to come. That's why David Price is still with the Dodgers, aside from his contract.
He's actually been decent. To be fair to David Price, is a guy that thought he should have got cut before the season. I had to eat my words a little bit because he's been fairly good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he's missing bats, it comes in bunches, and that's what's been cool. But Mitch White serves a purpose. He eats innings. He comes in. He was fantastic the other day. That's that's who these guys are. They're there to give a break and just be a bulk guy. And if they have success, all for it. But he's not going anywhere. What are you doing with him? He's got team control. You can send him down. It doesn't. He's a raw stripling guy without the upside. He serves a purpose.
Yeah, and look, I'll say this. I would be surprised, maybe is a strong word. I'll put it this way. I will not be surprised if in the offseason Mitch White is traded because because they got a bunch of guys they're going to need to add to the 40-man roster to protect dudes from the Rule 5 draft. And so Mitch White, Andre Jackson, James Outman, those types of players, I think are the guys on the back half of the 40-man that they might sort of move on from in order to open up some 40-man roster spots. Whereas long-term, I think, 12 months from now, he's going to be surpassed by Grove and Pepio and all these guys in being able to fill that role. So I'll leave it at that. It's no disrespect to Mitch White, as our friend Daniel would say on this show. Joe B's got a question here. What do you think of Max Muncy hitting 8th in the lineup? We know he's a guy that's solid on base percentage. I imagine in this scenario, Gavin Lux is your number 9 hitter. Do you like him that far down in the lineup? I mean, the batting average sort of justifies him being that low, but what do you think about that one, Scott?
I've never been a big batting average guy since I evolved, as a fan and as a writer. You learn to look at the peripheral things that matter way more than batting average. But everyone forgets this guy Max Muncy is a 35 homer bat. He finished top 10
when healthy.
When healthy, when his UCL isn't hanging on by a thread. He's a potential 35 homer guy that was, I think, top 10 in MVP voting last year. I don't know where this hate on Max Muncy comes from. I couldn't tell you. So is it because he takes too many pitches? I don't know. But, in the 4-hole, it just goes along with the righty-lefty. And that serves a purpose in its own. But I don't agree with him moving down. I think that when you move a guy down in the batting order, that changes their approach. You're a run producer in the 4-hole, and that's what he's up there to do. He's up there to, provide protection for Trey Turner, or just like we saw today, they're not pitching to Trey. You have to deal with Max, and you saw what happened there. So that's why he's there. And what a guy to have batting in front of you, Trey Turner, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll push back. Like, where the hate comes from is he's been really bad this year. Like, and obviously when I say when he's healthy, he's fine. I agree with everything you said. I mean, you look back, he hit 36 home runs last year. He's hitting 150 this year. I'm with you. Batting average is not at the end-all, be-all. He's got a 263 slugging percentage. He's 20th percentile in exit velocity, 30th percentile in hard hit percentage. All the expected numbers are bad. I mean, his walk rate is elite. His chase rate is elite. He's barreling the ball up a little bit, but I mean, you look at weighted runs created plus 100 is league average. He's 82, so he's 18% below average. And so I am not disagreeing with the overall picture of Max Muncy. I'm not the guy. Nobody here is saying cut the guy, get rid of him. He sucks. He's injured. And so I think it's a fair question from the perspective of what do you do, Scott, with a injured Max Muncy? Because until we get a sample size that tells us he's not injured, I mean, the strikeout rate is not good. Yes, the walk rate is great, but until we see a guy who is not injured, what would you do with this version of Max Muncy? Because I'm with you. Fully healthy Max Muncy, he's the 4-hitter. I'm great with it. But do you want a guy batting fourth who's got a 260 slugging percentage, striking out 22% of the time? I understand the question from that perspective.
He's playing hurt.
Yeah, I agree, but that's what we've got, So when we get asked, what do you think of him in the 8 spot? It's a hurt version of Max Muncy, to be fair.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I believe that Rios could have been on a track to be that guy.
Yeah.
He could have and that's just where they're at. It's super unfortunate that Rios went down. That he was really looking solid against lefties, against righties, and he just looked like an evolved hitter, just a guy who was hungry at the plate, who's been out for a while, and that pains me because Rios is just a really fantastic piece, controllable piece, which is just the type of guy the Dodgers love to have around all these superstars that are making a ton of money. Max Muncy's contract is so manageable for who he is. It's one of the best steals in baseball. And they will certainly pick his contract up next year. He's got a club option and for $13 million. So he'll be around. He's not Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper doesn't have the same injury. So everyone looking at Bryce Harper having, a minor tear, Max Muncy, they knew it was torn last year immediately. Like they covered that up. Anyone thinking Max was coming back in the playoffs was nuts. He sustained such a worse injury than Bryce Harper. So I think that Max needs time. And today was just a glimpse of what a little refresher can do.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this could go two directions, right? We could be sitting here a week from now saying the trend is he struck out 3 out of 5 times, and we could be sitting here saying the trend is he had 2 extra base hits and went 2 for 5, So we'll see. Okay, next question here. THP, this is a good one. What's been one aspect of the team that you are pleasantly surprised by this year? I'll let you go first on this one, Scott. Maybe it's a player, maybe it's a position group, something like that. But what's one thing that you've been pleasantly surprised by this year?
I think a question that I was asked right away at the beginning of the year was the back end of the rotation. Yep. I think that for everyone, I think that'll get lost in the shuffle a ton. Like that it's all about, which guys aren't performing or, how quick people were to jump off the Mookie Betts bandwagon after 11 games, which is crazy. But it's been the back end of the starting rotation, which has been their backbone. It's been their strength. You get Gonsolin, who was fighting for a spot. Yeah. Andrew Haney fighting for a spot, Tyler Anderson, piggyback, and these guys have carried them, and that's been incredible.
Yeah.
It's been a breath of fresh air because the back end of their rotation has always been a question mark. It's all right, you'll have 3 solid starts, and then let's get the bullpen warm. But they provided bulk, they provided length and quality.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Look, the Dodgers, if you came into the season doing these shows, getting comments from people, everybody was concerned about the rotation. When can we trade for a guy? When can we trade for a guy? The Dodgers right now have the best starting pitching ERA in all of baseball. They're number 1. That's with their best pitcher, Walker Buehler, struggling mightily. Their second best pitcher, Julio Urias, not at 100%, and Clayton Kershaw having missed what, 50% of the season thus far? So if I told you Buehler was going to be terrible, Urias was going to be very good but not great, and Kershaw was going to miss 50% of the first, half of the season, quarter, 2/3 of the, whatever we're at, 1/3 of the season, and I told you they had the number one starting pitching ERA, you would call me crazy. If I told you Tony Gonsolin leads all of baseball in ERA, you'd say I was crazy. If I told you Tyler Anderson was going to have 26 scoreless, exactly. Who did they trade for? So I'm with you. I think that's an obvious one. I'll throw one more. I think the bench offensively has been pretty good. I think Austin Barnes, being competent, a league average, maybe a league average hitter.
The best backup catcher in the league.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's close.
Yeah, totally. So I think that, Alberto has not been great, but he's been fine. I mean, we're comparing him to Billy McKinney. So if that's the standard, Eddie Alvarez gets 2 hits in his first game up and everybody's like throwing a party like he's the second coming. Zach McKinstry's a guy I trust. Obviously, Rios was hitting well before he got injured. And there is flexibility. Once Muncy comes back, you've got some room to move some guys around. And so I would say sort of the depth of the offense has been a pleasant surprise after last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
THP says anything is better than McKinney and Noisy. I liked Sheldon Noisy. I felt a little bit of vindication when Noisy. I haven't looked lately. He was off to a hot start, but I always thought he gave competent at bats and put some good swings on the ball. But I know nobody forgave him after the failure to stretch at second base. So.
No, I never did. Sheldon Noisy, Billy McKinney, and Luke Raley. I don't know. I'm okay on all that.
Yeah. Noisy though. Here we go. Charlie's got a question. 6-man rotation. We've talked about this on the show before. But we know, again, Kershaw due back this weekend. Andrew Heaney started in Oklahoma City. I believe this was his 3rd rehab start. They said he needs to make 4. So he's got, 5 days from now would be what, like Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. He makes another one and then he's good to go. Obviously things could change. Maybe he looked, depending on how he feels. He said he hasn't felt pain in a few weeks. That's good news. But, the Dodgers have a stretch, I think, of like 20-something straight days with a game coming up. And then, of course, they have a little bit of a break, and then it's the All-Star game. So we're about a month away from the All-Star game. Do you think the Dodgers go with the 6-man rotation if everybody's healthy, Scott?
I think so. I think that with the exception of, if someone, just like we talked about the other day, benefits from their routine and extra days off doesn't work for them. But at this point of the year, everyone is still tinkering with something. I don't know there's not many pitchers around the league right now that haven't experienced, there's maybe 10 that haven't experienced some bump that they need to work with. And Andrew Heaney has been amazing in his rehab start. So when he comes back up, he'll be ready to go. I don't see anyone right now that is just like, you'll put them in the bullpen, sacrifice their length and what they've done in the starting rotation. I mean, who are you going to do that with?
Yeah.
Who are you going to do that with? Andrew Heaney, Tyler Anderson, Gonsolin, and they've performed the best out of anyone out of who they are, and then not named Julio, Buehler, Kershaw. They've been great. Yeah. So are you just going to push them to the bullpen? I don't think so. And no.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I think the 6-man rotation makes some sense. Just give everybody a little bit of a break. And, it's like that way you don't have to hurt anybody's feelings either. You don't have to tell Tyler Anderson or Andrew Heaney or somebody like, hey, we're actually going to send you to the bullpen.
Blake will enjoy the pen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Blake Williams, who writes for us, points out, and I did a little bit of research, Sheldon Noisy is back to being terrible. So I apologize for defending Sheldon Noisy for even 3 seconds. I know he was off to a hot start. We could look at the splits maybe, and he had a good April maybe. Yeah, he's hitting 328 in April, OPS at 863. May 441 OPS. June has made just 3 plate appearances and is 0 with 2 strikeouts. So
like I said, man, just because it looks like you're trying really hard, that doesn't keep you around.
Yeah, so I got to apologize. Sheldon Noisy deserves no love. Let's get to one question here. This is a great one from Maxwell. We'll close the show on this one. Do you think the Dodgers' record is misleading at all? They just don't feel like a top team World Series favorite to me for some reason. I'll let you take this one, Scott. I mean, how do you feel about the Dodgers? The Dodgers have, they've waffled between having the best record and the second best record in the National League. As of right now, they have the best record in the National League, 649 winning percentage. Only the Yankees have a better record in all of baseball. They're 37-20. The run differential is the best in baseball at 114. They have one of the best offenses in baseball. They have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. Is any of that misleading? Or maybe another way of putting it is, do you think what they are doing right now is sustainable?
They should be better.
Okay. So
They
you
should
think
be better.
you think it's misleading in the sense that they appear to be worse than they are.
Yeah, they score the most runs. I think they've allowed the least runs. That's with the exception of the Yankees. Is that right? No, the Astros and the Yankees.
The Astros
both
are 2 runs better than them, and the Yankees are about 23 runs better as far as runs allowed.
Yeah, their expected wins loss is 40 and 17. They should be better. Just because there's some spells where the team doesn't hit. That happens. Guys don't hit, and that's just they blow some games in the back end of the bullpen in the middle innings, and it happens.
Yeah.
But they should be better. I'd have to go back and look at the games where it was just like obvious things that went wrong. But it feels like I'm not saying better in the sense that, just like add 10 more wins, just a few. That's it,
Yeah.
That's really where it is.
Yeah. CK Chin chimes in. Vegas says the Dodgers should actually be 4 wins better at this point in the season. I'm not sure where we get Vegas says that from, but maybe that's based on run differential or something like that. Expected wins. It would be my guess. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, look, if you want to be pessimistic, you could say Gonsolin is not sustainable. Tyler Anderson's not sustainable. And then go with that. And I think nobody's going to argue with you. I mean, look, I'm a pro Gonsolin guy. I would defend Gonsolin more than I would defend Anderson, although Anderson's been very good. 2 of the top, whatever I said, 25 pitches in all of baseball. And yet Gonsolin, I think there's a version of Gonsolin that is sustainable around a 3 ERA. I think he could land there and be very good. I just believe in Gonsolin. Which is more likely? Like Tony Gonsolin being way worse than he is right now, or Walker Buehler being way better than he is right now? That's a question that I think we got to deal with and ask yourself. It's a complicated question, obviously, of course, because there's a lot of mess with Walker Buehler around. So I think I'll put it this way. I think the pitching staff is a wash. I think getting Kershaw back is going to be a plus. I think getting Heaney back is getting a plus. I think Gonsolin probably regresses a little bit. I think Anderson regresses a little bit. I think Urias is what he is, and I think Buehler might, I think he's slightly better than he currently is, but even if it stays close, that's a wash. Tell me offensively, the best team offense in baseball, what's unsustainable about it? Mookie Betts the best player in baseball right now. He's done that before. Freddie Freeman, you could say, is underperforming. Trey Turner, I would say, is at or slightly above expectations. Chris Taylor, at expectations. Justin Turner, at expectations. Will Smith, below expectations. Cody Bellinger, at expectations. I mean, so I'm looking at the lineup and saying, yeah, this is pretty much what I expect the lineup to do. And then I look at the bullpen and I say, it's fine. I mean, they're like I think number 9 in all of bullpen ERA. I think, and there's no reason for me to believe that's not sustainable. So I think this is right about where the Dodgers should be. That's how I would land. I think the pitching staff as a whole, are they going to be the number 1 starting pitching ERA all season? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Are they going to be a top 10 bullpen all year? Yeah, I think they are going to be. Are they going to be the top offense in all of baseball all year? Yeah, I think they should be. So I look at it and say, it is what it is. Should they have gotten swept by the Pirates? No. So if Vegas says, based on run differential and all that, they should be 4 wins better, that sounds about right to me. I think they're going to win 65% of their games, maybe more. I think they're going to win the division. I think they're going to win the National League, and none of that's going to surprise me. Do I think they're going to win the World Series? Total crapshoot. But I think over the sample size of a regular season, I expect things to play out exactly as they are right now.
Yep.
So with you, if you want to say they're going to be a little better, I have no disagreement. If you think they're overperforming, that's where I would disagree, and neither of us is saying that.
Yeah, the bullpen hasn't been bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in close games, they're not over 500 in 1-run games. I think they are 0-4 in extra inning games. Like, it's a lot of it lies in the bullpen. And if the bullpen had Trinan, Canely didn't get hurt, these issues wouldn't be happening. Like, it's a lot of guys who are underperforming, just like we spoke on. Phil Bickford is not who they're figuring things out. Vesia still figuring things out. Brewstar is not missing bats, but he's been good, but it's just a lot of pressure on the bullpen and having to push guys into spots that they're really trying to figure out who can take over these roles. And I think that the only spot that I can see where they haven't performed has been the bullpen. And that's the difference between a few wins, which is where you're getting my expectation of a few games, because there are a few games. Just in that Phillies series was probably the most frustrating series I've watched in a couple years.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, look, if they finish 9th in ERA, bullpen ERA, that's probably the worst they will have finished in the last 7 years as far as ranking. I mean, the Dodger bullpen has been consistently good. I would say Trinan being out hurts, and it doesn't sound like he's going to be back. I wouldn't count on that. I'm a believer in Kimbrel. I think he's going to get better as the season progresses. I think Daniel Hudson, we're seeing what he is. I think a better version of Caleb Ferguson is coming down the pipeline. And so I think overall in the bullpen, again, I think what they are now, if not better, is kind of where I would pencil it in. And look, if there's one area of the team that you can pretty much guarantee the Dodgers are going to make a move, it's usually the bullpen. They'll go and add a couple pieces at some point in the season that become a 7th or 8th inning guy that you just trust. And who knows, maybe Danny Duffy comes back and makes an impact there. They've got some options. Tommy Kahnle, if he is able to come back and make an impact there. I like the general trend of this team. And honestly, for the first time, we're not going to do a trade deadline thing now, but if the roster, if guys can stay generally healthy, I don't know if there's a glaring need for the Dodgers to go out and make a move. I mean, if you can get a bullpen arm, maybe, but it's the 40-man roster's got complicated things in there as well. So, hey, folks, we appreciate you joining us. We are well over the hour mark, and so as much as we would like to continue this, we're going to have to cut it short. Again, thank you for joining. Check out DodgerBlue.com for the latest. We got a recap up of today's game, Dodger Blue 1958 on social media, of course. Subscribe, ring the notification bell here on YouTube. If you're watching, check us out. Check out our podcast. Even if you're not a podcast person, download the Apple Podcast app, download Spotify. Please subscribe, rate, and review. That would be a huge help to us. Matt and I are going to be live on Saturday after Saturday's game. Clayton Kershaw allegedly returning in that one. I believe it's a 4:15 start, so not a super late post-game show either. So Saturday at about 7:30, Matt Moreno and I will be live on here. So please join us for that. That's Scott Germain. Scott, we appreciate you joining us. Enjoy the rest of your night. And everybody tuning in, we'll see you next time. As always, this has been Dodger Heads, presented by DodgerBlue.com.